went live because I don't know if I did. Oh, I did.
You'll see it over here.
Yeah, okay. Ooh, that water's hot.
Should take about 15 seconds.
Okay.
You can start talking even now.
Oh, that's right. Of course I can. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's live stream. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. Hi, thank you for joining me. We're going to do a live group energy healing session for the current pandemic, the current COVID-19 pandemic, which is being faced by people in all countries of our world. It is such a privilege and an honor to be with everybody. It is such a joy to be here with everyone. So thank you for being with me. The way I'd like to organize tonight's session is I'd like to start with a little prayer of gratitude, and then I'd like to spend just a few minutes, especially for the new people, describing energy healing and kind of setting a foundation for tonight's work. As soon as we've done that, if possible, I think it would be very nice to take a few moments of silence, and we can all establish that silence within ourselves and within our collective, and then dive into the healing work. And most of tonight's session will just be the healing work. Oh, really? Well, I don't know, but it's not over here. Oh yeah, look at that. I don't know what to say about that. Oh, here, I know what to do. How's that? Is that better?
Well, no, in 15 seconds.
Okay. Just making a few adjustments here, a few fine adjustments so that everything looks right. Is it going to be good or is it going to be fail? We shall see. All right. So it's good? Oh yeah, it's very good. Okay. Very nice. All right. So let's start with a prayer of gratitude. Thank you. Oh, and thanks everyone for the slight informality at the beginning of our session because, you know, here we are live. So that's how it goes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. All of us, all this world, all of humanity, this moment, rare opportunity of global transformation. Thank you for being the ability of consciousness to heal. Thank you for being the entire history of humanity and everyone's ancestors. Thank you for being that bridge between the source of creation and the entire field of manifestation. Thank you for our ability to work concisely and efficiently, and for the mechanics of experience and understanding being that structure which allows us to integrate and stabilize the energy healing process, so that as we go through this process this evening together as a group, each one of your abilities to better utilize the technologies of energy healing will improve. So one of the many byproducts of tonight's session is that we all become better energy healers as a result. Thank you all for joining me. All right. Well, we kind of done. It's half done. For all the new people and for the people who've been with me for a long time, what is energy healing? Energy healing, in a nutshell, is that ability to focus attention in a really concise manner to produce a specific effect in the environment at the gross material level, at the material level. But this process starts with attention. So we have tools that we're using, and attention is our main tool. Our consciousness or our attention is the main tool in the energy healing process. And I was noticing that when we think about energy healing, there are a lot of different forms of energy healing that are accessible to people at this time. And we've got like divine prayer, for example, or Reiki, or people who do, like crystal healing, or various kinds of sound healings and so forth. This energy healing that we will be utilizing this evening is a little different from those, and so I just wanted to define that and clarify for everyone. Okay, good. We're focusing attention. Attention is our tool. But with our attention, the brilliance is, with our attention folds in on its own nature. Attention attends to itself. Attention attends to itself. When attention attends to itself, it finds itself all the way at its own origins, its own source. This is so important. This is so important because the ability for attention to access its own source, that source, which is the source of everything, which is the source of the whole field of consciousness, which is the source of everything that exists, that is an infinite resource of intelligence, energy, creativity. So when attention attends to itself, it accesses this source of all resource. And from there, the tools and the capabilities for energy healing are gained. Then, so that's one tool, is our attention. Another tool is Dharma. Dharma is a word from the Vedic tradition which doesn't have an English correlate. It essentially means right action. It essentially means that which sustains this universe. Dharma stands on 4 pillars. These 4 pillars also don't really have English correlates, but as close as we can get, they are truth, compassion, purity, and the ability to let go, like austerity, you could say. So these become the tools. These values of Dharma become the tools. The application of attention to a difficult or challenging situation moves through the tool of Dharma. This is how it works. As this process continues, as we engage in this process, Dharma stabilizes. It stabilizes for the doer. And integration of Dharma, stabilization of Dharma, is the foundation for collective well-being. So as we're going along on this energy healing process, we are strengthening and perpetuating our own ability to utilize the technologies of energy healing, and at the same time, we are supporting a better condition for our collective. All right, there's one more tool. So that's 2 tools, right? Attention is one, Dharma is another. The last tool is we need some guideposts. We need a map. We need to figure out, okay, if we're going to focus our attention intelligently, like how do we get to the spots that we need to be? And this map, there are many ways to slice up the ocean of consciousness, because basically attention is that pure resource of consciousness, of pure consciousness. Consciousness is like an ocean. So how do we slice it up? Any pair of opposites can act as points of reference for creating a kind of a spectrum, right? You create a spectrum between 2 points of opposites in order to understand the entire range of that which the awareness is going to. So in this case, it's very, very useful. It's very, very useful to look at the individual and look at oneself from the range of dynamically manifest to unmanifest. And this path from the manifest to the unmanifest is the path that awareness travels when it attends to its own nature. You start at the thinking level, and awareness focuses on its own self, and as it comes into, it creates folds or layers of its own nature upon itself. As it folds in on itself, it comes to its essential nature, and at that point, the beauty, like the magic of it, is that awareness realizes, yes, the source of creation, it is what I am. It is my nature. Okay, so enough about what is energy healing. That's the basic principle of energy healing. What are we doing today and how are we doing it? This part of the process is that Dorothy, my job, is to act as a voice for our collective. My job is to act as our voice. Our collective has come together with a common intention to focus our attention as a group, which makes us very powerful, on the issue or the concern of the global COVID-19 pandemic. This is what we're doing right there. Okay, so first thing, I was thinking this would be a good point in our process. Let's see, we've been going on a few minutes already. So we all know what energy healing is now. This would be a good time to take just a few minutes of silence. This is what I would like to do. Now, I know anybody who's joining us during this next couple minutes while we're in silence is going to be wondering what the heck stupid live stream this is, like she's just sitting there silently. But I think there's a great value. I've been field testing this principle in my live webinars, which come up every 3 weeks. And what I found is that our healing collective seems to function extremely powerfully, much more powerfully and more profoundly when we enjoy a moment of silence together, because it's in this silence that awareness folds in on its own nature and experiences that infinite, unbounded, eternal resource of pure divine being deep within. And it is a very, very powerful foundation for starting tonight's healing work. So even though it could confuse a few people coming in late, I think we'll go ahead and do this. I'll watch the time. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes. And during these 2 or 3 minutes, I encourage everyone to just enjoy the silence. Whatever is happening in the heart as far as your personal desires or intentions or wishes for this particular healing, may that be so. May the silence and that infinite resource of being help to support your intention. And each of us, this is so important that each of us comes into this with our own unique intention, because what makes a healing collective powerful is that we're each representing a slightly different point of perspective on the same process. Even on the process or the experience of that silence, we're each offering our slightly different perspective on it. And the ability to do that is like cutting facets into a diamond. that the diamond is the wholeness of our collective, but each facet holds its own unique space, and in so doing, provides a foundation for the diamond to really sparkle, to be a great and beautiful expression, a more perfect expression of that divine intelligence that is actually administrating the whole situation. It is the beginning and the body and the end of all of our experience. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a minute and then slowly open the eyes. No, I'm not Jewish. Thanks for asking. All right. That silence is so luscious. It's so juicy. It's kind of, we go into it, it's like, I didn't even want to come out, but I'm, it's important to be here and to give expression to what's going on. All right. So we're focusing on the pandemic. Lots and lots of information has come to my door over the last, weeks and many weeks. And of course, all of us, if anybody's been following the news, is well aware that there's lots of information out there. But it seems that the main principle with the pandemic or with the virus is that it affects the respiratory system. It affects the capacity of the body to absorb oxygen from the air. These are the two main things that I've come to understand. So we need to look at these two first principles. I do have a whole separate blog post and some videos on the respiratory system on my knowledge base, and recently uploaded a video about the respiratory system. So you can check that out when the time comes. There we go. But, when you're ready for that, we can look at that. And I won't go into all the detail that I went into in the blog post and the video, but suffice it to say that the principle of the respiratory system is that it represents that junction point between individuality and universality, essentially. I mean, you can understand now basic universal principles like the relationship between individuality and universality exist at every single point in the whole physiology, right? You can come down to within every cell and so forth. But some of the systems of the body make better metaphors for various strokes of divine interaction than others. So we can think of the divine source of creation as interacting with itself within its own nature, and all the forms and functions of the physiology reflecting that interaction in some way or another, so that living in a human body is itself a lesson. It is itself an expression of the way in which divinity structures the entire universe. That we can look to our own physiologies and we can find the answers. We can find principles of divine expression in our physiologies. Respiratory, all the universal air comes in, it comes into the individual structure, and then that air, when it gets to the alveoli, it transfers to the blood. And in the blood, as the air comes in, it brings life force, it brings oxygen. Our bodies love oxygen, our cells love oxygen. And the same structures in the red blood cells which hold the oxygen, then after the oxygen has been delivered to the cells of the body, those same structures pick up carbon dioxide and other toxins and move them back out again. So it would be good. I'm not going to look at the comments, even though they're really tempting. They're right over there. Somebody else is monitoring the comments. It's really tempting, but I'm not used to live streaming, you guys. Usually I'm doing live webinars, so I'm learning as I go. This is my first really major live stream, so at that point, I thought it would be good at this point for everyone to just take a breath and pay attention to how this feels. With gratitude, of course, because we can do this. But how it feels to bring in the oxygen and then to let out the carbon dioxide. Just for a moment, just a breath. Notice the quality of the oxygen. Oxygen is so luscious, isn't it? It's such a beautiful substance that we have the privilege and joy of taking in. Oxygen represents that bliss of the absolute. It represents that sweetness of divinity, which feeds life. When we think of the divine in us, it's like the very life of us. It's our very life. And the oxygen is like that. The oxygen has this light, lovely quality, light, lovely, nourishing quality, which is very much in its feeling in the body, akin to the life force within us. This is what people lose connection with when they get sick with the COVID-19. I was watching videos of people on the front lines, medical professionals on the front lines, talking about how they've seen people die of pneumonia, and they've seen people die of COVID-19, and it doesn't look the same. Even though certain levels of the medical establishment are saying, oh, well, when people die of COVID-19, they're really dying of pneumonia, the front lines don't seem to be disagreeing slightly with that. And they're saying that with COVID-19, what appears to, with pneumonia, a person's lungs fill up with liquid. It becomes very difficult for them to intake a breath. That's why ventilators are so good, right? The ability to go is not there because there's no room for anything to fill up. Evidently, even on the final breaths of a COVID-19 patient, the lungs are still working and the air can still be pulled into the lungs, but this patient dies of oxygen deprivation. This is what I'm gathering from the videos I'm watching. And it's rather chilling for the healthcare workers, because we know that when there isn't enough oxygen in the body, we lose our pretty pink color. So that's a little chilling to watch someone die and be the wrong color. But that's not what happens with pneumonia. This is a very important point. We need to understand what we're looking at before we go in with our attention to heal it, right? We're looking at that point in the blood. We're actually looking at the blood and how the hemoglobin in the blood is able to take the oxygen out of the air and take it to the cells of the body as needed, and then put the carbon dioxide in and eliminate it. And what seems to be happening is that process is getting disrupted. So what exactly is happening energetically in that process? We need to analyze. The light of being, the light of divine being, is not able to integrate at the physical material level of the body, right? Because the red blood cells, they represent the physicality of the body, right? And the oxygen isn't able to get in and bind to the hemoglobin. Now, in the circulatory system, energetically, the flow of blood represents the flow of bliss. And I think this is probably why energetically the flow of blood represents the flow of bliss, because the bliss is that oxygen flow. It's as if the whole system, and now I'm just, at this point, I am bowing down to the light in everyone who is watching, because my ability to understand what's going on is on the basis of the light of your understanding, because we are thinking together and I am being the voice of our collective. So we're diving, because that's as far as I had ever gone with it. The alveoli represent a point where individual ego meets collective ego. Or we could say small ego meets cosmic ego. Both are present in everyone. But for many people, and I would say as a result of cultural conditioning, there is a tendency in our world for people, individuals, to disregard their cosmic connection and to think of their eternal self or their cosmic self as something that stands outside of themselves. Even to think of forms of their own body, our own bodies, such as the powerful forms that are able to promote tremendous healing for the physiology, to think of them as in terms of something outside oneself, like, oh, well, those are like my guides and my angels, as if the guides and the angels are something out there in the ether somewhere. When a virus enters the body, there is a relinquishing of personal power. There is an exploitative energy that comes into the body that takes that position of authority in the body and starts to run the show. this running of the show is upheld by beliefs which adhere to the idea that the authority stands outside of me. So the first principle we need to address is the principle of where is the authority. The anchor of our authority is in the third chakra area of the body. This is the anchor of our authority. So we're checking in on everyone's physiology now. And in our healing collective, first, the coherence of our healing collective. Each person in the healing collective is checked. We all check ourselves, we all check each other. We make sure that the anchor to one's personal authority is stabilized in the third chakra. Just holding space for that and feeling it, feeling that anchor. This means self-trust. This means clearing distrust or mistrust from the physiology. Mistrust tends to sit in the area between the heart and the throat, because the heart area is where we own and experience our essential truth. Trust is born of integration of the heart center, but habits of putting other people's needs and desires first, habits of self-sacrificing for the sake of others, habits of turning the truth around a little bit in order to accommodate what we think other people would like or want, or how to suit other people's conditions, creates, over the long course of time, creates layers of mistrust in this area between the heart and this throat area. And the reason is that we touch our world through the throat area. This energy of the throat chakra is the energy that gives rise to speech, which is one of the ways we touch our world, and also is the foundation for the shoulders, arms, and hands, which is another way we touch our world. So the structure of the physiology responsible for influencing or touching the world comes from this throat area. So when we put up a blockage because our essential truth, sorry, it's a mirror image to me, when our essential truth goes through a filter in this central area, which also, by the way, is where the thymus is, which is the overseeing administrator of the immune system. Oh, no coincidence there. So the strength of the immune system is organized or administrated through the thymus, which is right here between the heart chakra and the throat chakra. So you can call it like the 4.5 chakras, something like that. There's a filter there. There's a filter that tends to turn our truth, our essential truth, what we absolutely know to be reality. And it puts it through a filter which is supported by cultural conditioning, that we are expected to behave in certain ways with our collective, so that everybody stays happy and everybody stays calm. It's important to act socially appropriately. I'm not advocating otherwise. However, truth, this is where we come back to Dharma. This is where Dharma becomes a really useful tool. Truth is one of the 4 pillars of Dharma. I mentioned that before. I have more space on this side, I guess. Not quite in the center. Truth is the one foundation of Dharma. And I'm using English words to describe these 4 foundations: truth, compassion, purity, and you could say abstinence or letting go, or the ability, austerity is that last one. With truth as the guide, as the stable foundation for dealing with any problem, it is possible to bring one's essential truth to the surface in a way which does not offend, or, no, I would say that's incorrect. it is possible to offend at any time, because offense is not something that is necessarily intended on the part of the doer, but is an effect on the part of the receiver. So one cannot necessarily control whether they offend or not, but one can control whether one's actions have an evolutionary effect or not, because sometimes the truth is inconvenient. Sometimes the truth is a little uncomfortable. If, for example, as a loving person, love is another one of the pillars, right? Compassion or love is another one of the pillars. Sometimes a loving person has to set a healthy boundary. And what we do is we bring that truth value together with our compassion and our desire for everyone's highest and best outcome, everyone's evolution, and we set a healthy boundary, because a healthy boundary is necessary in order to create order, which purity and order is that other leg of Dharma, in order to create an orderly situation so that everybody's highest and best interests are served. I bring this up. Knowledge has purifying power. I bring this up because the filter that causes an individual to either lie to themselves or be self-deceptive, or to lie and be a little deceptive to others, sits in this area where the immune system administrator resides. And it filters behaviors so that when we produce an outcome, it will come out in a specific way. Always, we are trying, everyone's always doing their best to produce an effect which will be life-supporting for others. But it doesn't always mean either, but self-sacrificing is not good for oneself. So we're looking for that balance. We're looking for that balance. The balance is found by applying the tools of Dharma. Yeah, that's the right side. Sorry, I've got choreographer's dyslexia because my camera's backwards, but where am I? Applying the tools of Dharma to the challenges that we face in such a way that our behavior upholds our essential truth, at the same time conforms to the expectation and codes of behavior within our collective social codes. It is possible. You are smart. We can do this. So here is beautiful, is that did I mention one of the third tools was our navigational tool? Yes, the navigational tool between very dense and very subtle. Right, so we're going to pull up our navigational tool now. I'm going to use my fingers as a kind of map here. And what's going on? Gosh, this mirror image thing is really getting to me. I'm doing my best with it, you guys. So if we've got physical material up here at the top, and down here at the bottom, we have the source of creation, completely unmanifest, completely qualityless. And then we've got all this field in between. Here, in these very, very abstract levels of our physiology, very kind of pure energy levels of our physiology, we do not experience ourselves as individual. We experience ourselves as collective. And here at the astral level, our world, this is the astral level, is where we find the web of life. The astral level is where our attention takes the form of threads or streams or filaments, which have a quality of movement associated with them. So when you think, I shall go to the store and get food, there's a little stream goes zzz, and it goes to the store already before you went to the store, and then you end up at the store instead of the flower shop or wherever else you could have ended up, or your friend's house. So it's these little streams of consciousness that we're constantly sending out, where every thought has a little thread associated. You think of your friend, or you think of a family member you love, and the love flows across that thread, and that person, wherever they are, even if there's some dear person who's passed away in the long past, wherever they are, they feel that, right? All right, this is the astral level of creation, where the web of life, the web of life, these threads, they can form themselves into sacred geometrical patterns. They can form themselves into stable structures that are able to hold, you could say, hold space for specific qualities of consciousness, specific values of intelligence. And it is possible to, with our attention, to manifest, to cultivate, to create, forge a matrix where every node of the matrix is an expression of Dharma. That these four pillars of Dharma express themselves in their pure form in the center of the matrix. And then as the matrix evolves out to its outer edges, you get combinations, right? Truth plus compassion, or which gives you devotion, right? Or truth plus compassion plus letting go gives you charity, right? So you can see how the legs of Dharma fit together, and then they give rise to these forms. By the way, both devotion and charity are expressions of human intelligence that have a naturally protective effect on the individual who applies them, who entertains them. Just saying. There are things we can do to protect ourselves, and giving is one of them. Either service and love combined as devotion, or service and love and value as charity. Also, austerity all on its own is a form of protection. Also, meditation is a form of protection. Medicines are a form of protection. Many forms. I am noticing the Dharma matrix stabilizing here. This is where it needs to stabilize. First, we stabilize it for ourselves. Once we have this established in our own physiologies, and our whole healing collective has this Dharma matrix stabilized right here in this 4.5 chakra area, this very important filter area, which sits between our essential truth and our ability to express our truth. Then we as a collective can offer it to the larger collective of our human family. As the Dharma matrix stabilizes in our physiologies, and then it extends to the human family, the family of humanity, what I'm noticing is that what's like lighting up for me is that down in the, what would be, if you think of your, down around the second chakra area, down in the second chakra area, there's something there that looks like illusion to me. It's very commonly held in our human collective. It's a kind of illusion that sits in the belly area. Now we know that our microbiome is primarily stationed in the belly area, and the microbiome is a very important player in our immune system. I'm looking to see if it is the microbiome that we are looking at here, or if there's something else. I'm definitely seeing illusion sitting there, and the illusion is oriented towards promoting experiences of shame, embarrassment, guilt in the belly area. That this is an area, and particularly associated with the vilification of sexuality, which is a kind of unfortunately somewhat commonly held principle. Ooh, lots of forgiveness is flowing to the belly. Lots of forgiveness, 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 forgiveness. And that forgiveness is actually flowing from the heart area to the belly area. So this is consciousness folding on its own nature, right? This is intelligence being with itself in different, like from different angles. Also, the other thing I was noticing in the belly when I first looked there, what first attracted my attention was kind of like a feeling of depression, a little bit of sadness or grief or depression. And I'm also noticing sadness, grief, and depression up in this area of the body, up in the chest area as well. But as I look at it, it appears that the sadness, grief, and depression is rooted in the belly area, which brings me to another principle of energy healing, which I didn't mention at the beginning, but is worth mentioning here, which is one of the main principles or premises of energy healing, is to go to the seed of the problem. Go to the source of the problem, to address it from the source. So sometimes as we're working along here, and I didn't have a plan, oh, we're going to heal this and we're going to heal that, and we're going to... No. I'm using the brilliance of our collective, of our healing collective. We're like a light, we're like a flashlight with many lumens. Each one of us is providing our own set of lumens to the collective, and that allows Dorothy to see more clearly what's going on and to be able to express the healing process in a way which is more sophisticated and complete than what I could do on my own. I bow down to all of you and the divine in all of you for being this, for being the lumens. Anyway, I noticed that depression. And the depression is connected to and associated with the microbiome. So I love to share with you what's going on deep inside my landscape. So as soon as I see the depression and I get clear, yes, it has to do with the microbiome, Dorothy dives the awareness back into the source of creation, because that ability for awareness to fold into its own source is one of the main principles of energy healing. As I dive into the source of creation, what I notice is a lack of prana, is a lack of life force in the food, a lack of life force in the food. The microbiome is all concerned. It's all concerned about the quality of our food. So the question is, how do we increase? This is my question. I'm diving my awareness back into the source of creation, right? Because that's what I do. That's how energy healing works. Awareness folds on itself. It goes to the source. And from there, all the resource comes. I keep repeating this because it's so important. And even though I've been soaking in it for decades, every time we do it, it's so luscious. It's like our moment of silence at the beginning of the session. Just so juicy. So just so wonderful. How the question is posed to the source of creation. How to that source of ourselves. How do we increase the prana, the life force, the chi? How do we increase that in the food? What do we do? The answer coming back is it comes from the air, and that it comes from the blood, and that the blood, okay, this is so interesting. The blood that is the carrier for the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and other materials is also a carrier for the nutrients which are extracted from the food at the level of the intestines. So there's a relationship between the giving of resource that the lungs provide, because they give oxygen to the blood, and also the giving of nutrients from the lower digestive tract to the blood. Oh, that is so interesting. Okay, very good. why this is interesting to me, and this is just me having my aha right now because I didn't know this before now. It's you guys that helped light up that path for me. Why is it interesting that people with diabetes seem to be more prone to serious complications from COVID-19 than people without? I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense that people who smoke might have worse symptoms. It makes sense that people with COPD or even heart disease might have more serious complications. But why diabetes? Why is that one of the big determinants? Well, all of a sudden, we see some sense here, right? That there's a connection between health of the digestive system and what's happening in the circulatory system. Because the virus is really ultimately corrupting the circulatory system. So quality of food is really important. Well, easy for us. Two easy solutions here. One is always bless your food. That's simple. I bet most of you guys bless your food, right? I mean, doesn't everybody bless their food? I thought everybody blessed their food. It's good to take a minute to bless your food, because blessing the food not only sets a condition for optimal digestion for the body, it's like a message to your own body. Like, okay, now I'm going to sit, I'm going to settle down for a second, I'm going to take in this food in a sacred manner. But also the attention on the food as blessed, as if offering it to the divine. As we take it in our own bodies, it's really an offering to the divine within us. Has an effect on the food itself at a very subtle level. It has an effect on the energy structure of the food. Here's another thing. There's a matrix for optimal food structure. There's a matrix for optimal food structure. So everybody in the session receiving now the download of that formula. It's like a formula. And the matrix is like a sacred geometrical form. I talked about these, or for those who are just coming, because I know people are coming and going. So, if I'm repeating myself a little bit extra on this live stream, it's because unlike my webinars where y'all come in and we just sit together consistently, in the live stream, people are more coming and going. So I just would like to reiterate that a matrix is comprised of the threads of consciousness that reside at the astral level of the physiology. Here is our navigational map. We've got physical material, densest level of physiology up here, subtlest level down here, astral body here, astral field, which is the web of life, which is where awareness takes the form of threads, and the threads form together into a sacred geometrical form. But in this case, the nodes, the knuckles, right, where the threads cross each other, the energetic form here is the form, all the structures, like they work together synergistically, right? All the different threads work together, or knuckles, joints work together synergistically, nodes, to promote optimal digestion, to promote optimal purity and nourishing capacity of the food. And this matrix, I'm going to take a moment of silence with you because I want everyone to receive this matrix clearly. Downloads usually coming through the crown of the head into the cord of light, which is also lighting up for me, which means we need to look at that as well. We'll do that after our silence, but I want everyone to receive the download for this matrix, because once you have the formula, the matrix can be placed with intention. And as I'm saying it, we are doing it. Placed with intention on your eating counters, eating tables, eating surfaces, the location where you prepare food, on your stove, in your oven, in your refrigerator, in your cabinets where this food is stored, across and around and through the whole kitchen area and the whole dining area. This matrix is stabilized in the house. Yes, we are doing energy healing for your house. Just like you can do energy healing for a physical body, we can do energy healing for a location as well. Everyone's food preparation and storage and food consumption areas are stabilizing with this matrix. It purifies the food. It uplifts and upholds the nourishing capacity of the food. It infuses the food. It opens the channels in the food that connect the original spark of life that was in the food with your physiology, with the divine within your physiology. So we could say that the food originates as a divine intention. It begins as a divine intention. And it manifests, it goes through this whole manifestation process. And after it manifests, we make it into something that we're going to eat, and then we eat it, and it goes back to nourish the divinity within us. So there's a whole cycle there. And what we're doing is we're essentially, this matrix connects, it's like the clasp on a necklace. It connects the two ends of that cycle. And in so doing, it infuses the entire necklace or the entire cycle of the food process from its beginnings as a spark of divine intention to its endings as the nourishment of divinity within us. It connects every step in that cycle to the divine process by which the source of creation creates the whole manifest field. I have I have blog posts on the digestive process and other exercises you can do and so forth. But we want to get back to COVID-19. It is, however, important that we have established this connection for everyone's optimal experience through the process of food consumption. It's a gift. It's a gift of divinity. And again, it's just divinity folding in on its own nature. Everything in creation is that. So the thing that we need to do, I'm looking, because the last time we did a big healing for all of us in the group, it extended out to all the individuals of Earth so that our healing collective is used for the sake of, we are using the power of our collective. We are intentionally directing the power of our collective to support healing for our human family of humanity. What's going out to the family of humanity from our healing collective is a wave of awakened recognition regarding, I was looking can we put these matrices in every kitchen in the whole world? That's what I was kind of thinking on that level. But it's like the divine or the flow, the natural flow of our healing process that we're in would prefer to handle it a different way. And one of the reasons it's coming to me is because, see, that was Dorothy's thought. Hey, let's put a matrix in every kitchen in America or every kitchen in the world. But no, the flow as it's coming is saying, no, what's really important is opening up an awakened recognition of the entire process from the very beginnings of the creation of the food all the way to its dissolution or its integration with our physiologies and with our divine self, or the divine within us. And the recognition or the waking up of that as the reality of what food really, really, really is, going to everyone in the world. That's what goes. And all of a sudden it makes sense, right? Because people eat in lots of places. People eat in their cars. They eat in restaurants. They eat in the park. We don't always eat in our kitchen. So it's good that this healing kind of expands or extends itself to a form which is more flexible and more stable. And of course, for all of us also, you all got the upgrade for your kitchens also, but it's good to have the upgrade at this like larger, more expanded level as well. Just feeling that now, just feeling this awakened recognition of all that has to do with food, of all that food is, going to our entire world collective, that we understand that divinity self-interacts through the process of eating. I have a lot to say about that. I've had a lot to say about that in previous webinars, so definitely check out some of the links on my knowledge base associated with digestion. Check out the link on Soma. That's a good one. It's also related. And Soma, that's the material. That's the material that needs to it will help the part of the circulatory system where CO2 binds to the hemoglobin. This is very important for healing COVID-19. At this point, what we know about the virus is that the carbon dioxide gets bound into the hemoglobin in such a way that the oxygen then cannot bind. This is what happens, and the person basically becomes oxygen deprived. The CO2 getting bound into the hemoglobin and then not getting released properly means that the point of the breathing process where we exhale is somehow not doing what it's supposed to do. What's supposed to happen when we exhale is that our body, right where the blood comes up to the alveoli in the lungs, it lets go of the CO2 and we exhale CO2. And what seems to be happening is at that point, the COVID-19 patients aren't letting go of the CO2, and therefore the hemoglobin holding on to the CO2 has no room to receive the oxygen. When the blood returns from the cells of the body, when it returns back to the lungs, carrying the CO2, it carries other things too. And when, deep within the cells, the body receives the nutrition from the food, there's a point where the nutrition goes into the mitochondria, and in the mitochondria, the food goes through this transition between being kind of like a foreign material in our body to being our personal food, to being our personal structure. It's right at that junction between, you could say, from a digestive perspective, between the universal and the individual, right? Just as air goes from being collective to being our personal air, so food also goes from being the food out in the world to being our personal nutrition, right? And that point of finest point of the digestive process, where the food is coming in as from the mineral-rich blood, right? It's coming into the cells. It goes through this transition in the mitochondria where it becomes energy, and it's transformed into structures which actually become our physiology. So that's that important spot. We produce a byproduct which necessarily goes into the blood. And that's Soma. And that's another one of those Vedic terms. Remember I mentioned Dharma was a Vedic term. The Vedic terms, and my background is Vedic, that's why I'm using Vedic terms. I know a lot of you also have some Vedic background, so you get it. But the The soma is the finest byproduct of digestion, and it feeds the body's intelligence. It feeds those fine structures of consciousness in the body that are responsible for keeping the body balanced, for all of physiological functioning, certainly for healing. All this very fine intelligence in the body is fed by the soma. But the soma then, because it's produced deep inside the cells, it comes out, and thank you, I'm using your lumens, using everybody's lumens here. It comes out into the tissues of the body, but a certain amount of it does go into the blood. Of course, because blood cells are also fed by soma. And soma, when it flows, is blissful. It is blissful. So there's a connection between soma production and the bliss in the blood. And the more blissful the blood is, the better it is able to remain balanced and do its function effectively. But here's another interesting thing, that if the soma is in the blood as it's carried out from the cells, that means soma is more usually carried with the CO2, right? Because the oxygen comes in, and the oxygen is one of the going into the cells and nourishing the cells structures in the body, like the nutrients from the food. But then we produce, right, when all that nutrition comes in, then we produce the soma from the nutrition. And then the soma comes out and it spreads through the body, but it also comes out of us, and it comes out of our breath, and it goes out into the world around us. It feeds into the web of life, and it feeds our universal intelligence. It feeds those structures of our intelligence that reside throughout the creation, not just in our bodies. And this is one of these points. This is like a sticky point. And remember I said we need to come back to the cord of light? This is where we come back to the cord of light. And I'm looking at our clock, and I see we've already done an hour. Like, the hour just went like that. It was amazing. But I was expecting to go a little bit past the hour. I usually do an hour and 15 on these sessions. So we'll go a few more minutes because we need to look at this cord of light. It's very important. The cord of light, like the string of pearls with an infinity clasp at both ends. Like that, the cord of light, it congeals as it comes into the body, but it goes out the crown of the head, and it goes down out through the base of the physiology. And at both ends of the cord of light, infinity resides, forms of infinity, and they form a kind of a, it's like the clasp. The infinity is the same infinity at both ends. That's why the astral body is the shape of a torus, because the center of the astral body is that cord of light, and then it goes out, right? So it's like a toroidal shape. When the soma comes out, it feeds into the larger world. It feeds into the universe. And some of the intelligences that are responsible for our well-being and our healing and all the basic functions of our physiology are not contained only within our physiologies. Some of those intelligences reside in the larger field of our world, our universe, because our bodies are the sensitive antenna of our big eternal self. But the whole universe is our body. So our body is like, you could think of our physiologies, our physical bodies, kind of like the point of perspective, or the point of sensory perspective. But who and what we are is quite vast and eternal. Our consciousness is as big as the universe. So that means that this big world that we live in, including Dorothy, I get to be an expression of your eternal self. It's like a total privilege for me to do that. You're an expression of my eternal self, and I am so grateful. I look out at our healing collective, and it's just divine being. It's all divinity. I bow down to that. I bow down to the divine which you are. This is where the junction is between personal and universal. And this is where the corruption has set into the physiology associated with the COVID-19. Because the parts of the body, all we have to do is look at the parts of the body that are affected by the virus. And what we see is these are the parts of the body where the junction between individual ego and universal ego or cosmic ego, that's where that sits. And that's the part in our collective consciousness, the collective consciousness of humanity, that's hurting. It's crying right now. And when that part cries, it's drawing attention. And as the attention draws in, attention is divine source material. So the infinite resource of creation goes to the crying part, the part that's hurt or corrupted or suffering. And as awareness does this, it activates or enlivens all those qualities that are associated with the source of creation, all that infinite resource, all that wisdom, the activation of Dharma, tools, our tools. I'm feeling this as a warmth, activating or rising in the chest area. I'm feeling it as a warmth, a kind of a tingly warmth in the chest area. This is so good. You have done it. You did it. You did it. Our collective did it. It's creating a specific light medicine for the COVID-19, which applies to the chest. It applies like a balm. Remember when we were little kids and our mom put that eucalyptus-y smelling stuff on, right? It's like that, but it's much sweeter. It's much sweeter. It's very, very soft, and it's very, very delicate. What this light medicine is doing is produced within all of us for our own physiologies. But because our healing collective is coherent, because our original intention for this healing is to apply to the entire world family for the healing of everyone, we are able to, with our awareness or attention, extend or expand this light medicine to our human family. And the light medicine, this warm, sweet, soft, very, very delicate, very, very tender expression of integration. It's a kind of a bridge. It sits between sense of self as individual and the wisdom, the eternal wisdom of self as this entire creation, this entire great being, even the source of creation itself. It's so soft. This light medicine is so well, I could not have ever, with my individual intelligence, created such a thing as our collective has created here. This energy structure, the beauty, the value of it, the brilliance of it, the brilliance is that because it was created out of the collective of our entire healing group, it carries in it an energy signature of many different points of perspective, right? Because we're each a different point of perspective on the whole universe. And because it carries like a kind of a matrix within it of the ability to accommodate or to take into consideration multiple points of perspective, because it has that, it is able to appeal to all people in all places. It is able to accommodate any physiology into which it finds itself. It is able to pass through the center of our healing collective to the entire body of our human family, and is able to be received at the same very tender, intimate, delicate level of inner truth for each person. Wow. How brilliant is that? How brilliant is that? We created a collective light medicine through our healing collective, which could not have been created by an individual because it literally required multiple physiologies to contribute to its creation. Its role is to integrate multiple expressions of life with such delicacy and such, I would say, authenticity. Such authenticity that it is easily received by any member of the human collective that needs or requires it. There is a kind of creative strength rising up from the base of our physiologies now, from the root chakra, even the earth chakras, which are below the root chakra, but up through the physiology. And I'm feeling this formula rising up through the body, all the way up, and is coming from out the crown of the head. It's also coming through our breath, right? So beautiful. So if the virus can be transferred from one person to another through the breath, then so also the antidote to the virus can be transferred through the breath. What we're doing is we're turning our own personal breath into the breath of healing. Each one of us has this formula now. And it is such a privilege to hold and carry this formula in our physiologies as a gift to our own physiologies and as a gift to anyone who comes anywhere near enough to us to experience our breath. And as we breathe for the rest of our lives, our breath will go many places on this earth and will continue to heal humanity. And everybody who receives it, everybody who receives this download, everybody whose physiologies and whose consciousness is able to accept and receive. And, you know, it ends up working a little bit like the 100th monkey effect. It'll spread and spread and spread. It will spread far beyond today's healing collective. And as it does so, it will build a level of unity among all the members of our human collective, of our human family, that will support everyone's highest and best health going forward. And, you know, it's even possible that over the course of time, this will upgrade and uplift the immune systems of people all over the world, that we may live in a time where we don't fall ill from infections. Wouldn't that be nice? So may it be so. May it be. And I cannot thank you all enough, each of you, for your contributions this evening, for bearing with me through this already 1 hour and 20 minutes. Yikes, that's a long time. You gave me a lot of your time, and I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. And the exciting thing is that tomorrow we get to come together and do it again. And heaven only knows where we can go based on the foundation that we created today. So I hope lots of you can join me tomorrow. It'll be really exciting to see you again. And believe me, we will use today's healing work as a foundation for moving forward and doing even more amazing, powerful healing to support a graceful and beautiful, uplifting end to this coronavirus pandemic, global coronavirus pandemic, in a way which supports all of our dear, precious human family, all of our animal family. I understand animals are getting the virus now, and even supports the microbial world and the microbial intelligence of our world. So thank you all so much for being with me. This was really fun. I almost hate to push that end stream button, but I have to. So, so I love you all dearly, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.